Good morning, everyone. This is Jack Lavin, President and CEO of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us for today's Fireside Chat, hosted by the Chamber's Emerging Leaders Program. Emerging Leaders is the Chamber's young professionals group, and in just a moment, our two EL co-chairs will share a bit more about the program and how you can get involved. This past Tuesday kicked off National Hispanic Heritage Month, so I'm really excited and looking forward to today's event, where you'll have the opportunity to hear from Susana Meza, who is VP, Vice President of Community Impact at Wintrust Financial Corporation. In addition to leading Wintrust Community Impact Division, she is also a leader in the Hispanic business community, receiving numerous recognitions, including Negocios Now's Latinos 40 Under 40 and Who's Who in Chicago Hispanic Power Lists. Since joining the Chicagoland Chamber Board, Susana and her team have brought much leadership across several areas, including partnering with our Small Business Development Center to support entrepreneurs and small businesses in communities across Chicago, enabling us to continue serving minority-owned businesses throughout this pandemic. And I just want to give a special thanks to Susana and Wintrust. They have been a great support for our small businesses throughout this crisis, adding resources to the chamber so we can get information out to small businesses and help them. So Susana and her team at Wintrust, they've been great leaders, great help in helping the chamber and helping our business community, particularly our small business community, work through this pandemic and this economic crisis. Anyways, I'll stop there because I know you are going to hear more directly from Susana, along with today's interviewer, Angel Nieves. Angel is one of our emerging leaders, as well as manager of business planning and operations at Here Technologies. He's also the principal sponsor for Vamos, Here's Latinx Employee Resource Group. Thank you for moderating today, Angel. I also want to take a moment just to thank Amelia Salter, our Director of Programs at the Chamber, and the entire Chamber team for helping put this morning's program together. With that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Lisa Kapoor and Jeff Burgess, our co-chairs of the Emerging Leaders. Lisa is an attorney at Holland & Knight, where she practices commercial litigation, entertainment, and ethics law. Jeff is a registered representative with West Point Financial Group, where he brings 6 years of experience as a tax advisor doing individual and sole proprietor income taxes. Lisa and Jeff are wonderful chairs for the Emerging Leaders because, in addition to their professional careers, they both are passionate about giving back. Lisa serves on the Chicago Leadership Council of the Posse Foundation and is also a member of the Public and Charitable Services Committee at Holland & Knight Chicago office. Jeff is very involved with the American Cancer Society, where he serves as sales team lead for their 2020 Associate Board of Ambassadors. Really looking forward to this morning's program. Thank you all for being here. And thank you both, Lisa and Jeff, for your leadership. And with that, I hand it over to Lisa and Jeff.
Thank you, Jack, for those remarks and for joining us this morning. We always appreciate your leadership.
Yes, thank you, Jack. I echo Jeff's sentiments.
Well, good morning, fellow emerging leaders, and happy Friday. Today, I am particularly amped up because Fireside Chats are actually my favorite part of being in this group of young professionals. From the stories I've heard and the lessons I've learned to the connections I've made all along the way, these are all reasons why I absolutely love Fireside Chats.
I completely agree, Jeff. I also love the rich diversity of the speakers we featured in the past, and today is certainly no different. As the co-chairs of the Emerging Leaders Group, you and I have the privilege of setting the virtual stage for Susana Meza and Angel Nieves.
That's right, Lisa. Like Jack touched on earlier, Angel is a business strategist and operations expert who currently serves as a manager for a location intelligence and mapping company called Here Technologies, which also happens to be a chamber member. Angel also helps aspiring young professionals become influential industry leaders by unlocking their strengths and leadership skills.
Jeff, don't forget to mention that Angel is so impressive that he has his own personal website with a blog. And one of his blog posts contains Angel's top 10 goals before he reaches 40. You should check it out if you haven't already.
Really? I'll definitely take you up on that offer. That's impressive. But first, I want to hear from Angel himself. So I'm going to pass the virtual baton over to Angel, who will be introducing and interviewing our keynote speaker, who is none other than Susana Meza of Wintrust Financial Corporation. Take it away, Angel.
Thanks, Jeff. I'd like to first thank the Chamber for this opportunity. I'm excited to moderate this edition of Emerging Leaders Fireside Chat. I think our featured guest has a fascinating background that everyone will be inspired by. I'd like to remind you, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, we will be holding a Q&A session towards the end of this call, so please submit your questions in the Q&A chat box. So Susana Meza, she launched community engagement efforts in 2011 for Wintrust. And that eventually became the Community Impact Division at Wintrust. Under her direction, the division maximizes reporting mechanisms, helps internal departments and individual banks with best practices on partner engagement, and lays the groundwork for community impact. Previously, she served as Vice President of Marketing for Wintrust. She is a founding member of the Wintrust Community Impact Council and serves on the boards of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce and chair of the International Business Council on the Illinois Chamber of Commerce board. Welcome, Susana.
Thank you, Angel. And thank you for having me. And thank you to the entire Chamber staff and the wonderful work you do. And Jeff and Lisa, great intros.
Great, thank you. So let's start things off with some rapid fire lightning round questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
So what was the first job you ever had?
So the first job was a little bit later. It was a fun job. I was a junior in college, and it was at a downtown hotel. And it was a great summer job that I stuck with it just for another year or so.
Cool. So what are you currently reading or listening to?
Kind of boring, but current events. I almost read every single article of the Wall Street Journal, with the exception of maybe the opinion section, but that's what I do.
Okay, so tell us something that we don't know about you that's not in any of your professional bios or on your LinkedIn profile.
I'm going to go with the season here, and I'm a huge football fan. My husband and I are season ticket holders for the Bears, and we're a football house. So anywhere from, last night to like Sundays and Mondays, we watch a lot of football. And a tangent, nice. Another random tangent, because I wanted to give you guys something fun. If I could ever go duck hunting, I would. Haven't had the opportunity.
Very nice. That's interesting. So why don't you tell me what personality trait has gotten you into the most trouble?
My direct communication without being able to smooth it out and, dress it up. It's a lot of that brutal honesty. And I realize that.
If you could invite a famous person to dinner, who would it be?
It would have been Anthony Bourdain.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Aside from the personality trait, what's the best compliment that you've ever received?
That I seek criticism and really hard criticism, and that I take it and grow from with it.
Okay. And then as a kid, what did you want to be when you grow up?
I honestly didn't know. I never walked around, and I verified. I didn't walk around saying I wanted to be this. Later on, I really wanted to be a journalist, but can't say that I knew as a kid.
Okay, great. Well, that concludes our lightning round. You did a great job.
Thank you.
But while we're on the topic of you being a kid and your childhood, I think it'd be helpful if you could kind of walk us through what your childhood was like.
Sure. It was here, born and raised in Chicago. In the 50th Ward, I grew up in a very Jewish neighborhood. We were obviously not Jewish. And it was, school and summer camp. Those were my growing years since I was 5. So summer camp every summer, long days, come back beat. Small family, mom and dad. I have a sister who's younger. It's just the 2 girls, just 2 of us. And it was a fun summer that I remember from swimming. And I really looked back and looked at those memories, and they were really good memories. But other than that, it was pretty a small and quiet family.
Nice. And so, let's fast forward a little bit, right? So ultimately, you landed in the banking industry, right? Joining
Sure.
Wintrust. What led you to that point?
That was when the economy tanked in 2011, unfortunately, for a lot of us, right? So I was at an ad agency, loved it. But after 9/11 and what was a dismantling of a lot of departments, right? And I was young, I was like the newbie, so they weren't getting rid of me, but they were getting rid of a lot of teams. So teams that were, 6 or 7 people on a team were down to 1. So I started literally just looking online, and that's when I came upon Wintrust. And at the time, a really, really sharp chief, their marketing officer at Wintrust, basically, Ed, the CEO of Wintrust, brought in the head of one of Leo Burnett's chiefs to lead marketing at Wintrust. And that's how it happened. It was really just a search, submission, interviews. And then I got hired at a bank, basically, right? I was never expecting, I was looking for consumer packaged goods and some sexy marketing, but it was financial services. And I was tasked with marketing the Lake County and the McHenry County regions. So that was my step into the financial world. And I'm still here. I thought I'd be here for 5 years.
That's impressive. I mean, you've been there for 18 or more years. And so you started out in marketing and then you transitioned into community impact. Can you talk a little bit about that transition? How did that happen?
Oh, sure. So I was given a lot of freedom, and I have to be thankful for the organization, for Wintrust to be like that, right? To spot a need, spot a problem, work it out, try to propose a plan. So my boss gave me a lot of autonomy in the sense of getting more involved in the community. So that was involving more of like the partnerships that he was handling at the time. And really, there was probably so much to do, so he didn't have the bandwidth to do it. And I just started having deeper conversations with some of those partners and asking, what else? So we really took it beyond sponsorships to more engagement and programming. But what happened in 2011 when Wintrust was acquiring a lot of banks with new markets to us, not new to the city by any means, but new markets to Wintrust, I was tapped as that marketing person to take that forth and create that brand identity and representation to folks that didn't even know we existed. So that, I could go down that whole path, but that was really the start of it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
That's great. We'll get into a little bit more about the community impact work, but just fascinated to hear like your thoughts. So this year has been quite a roller coaster year for the economy, for the markets. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what are some of the emerging trends that you're seeing right now in banking in general?
So what I'm seeing is the relationships matter. Right, that was huge, and we saw that with the PPP process and anything that consumers and businesses are struggling. So who you have as that 3-legged stool or 4-legged stool in your corner, as you need your accountant, your lawyer, your banker, your advisors. Relationships matter. So as much as like in banking, we're going digital and faceless transactions. When the world changes, you still need that relationship. So I would say that that's one of the emerging trends. Personal. The other thing I would say is the corporate purpose, right? There's tough conversations happening. There's a tough reality out there. So they're asking, as they should, consumers are, what are you doing? And how are you an ethical corporation? And how are you operating with a purpose? So I think that's going to be a trend that we're going to be starting to see. Yeah, we're a little late on it. We're a little late on it, not Wintrust, but why? What are you doing? What else? What's the bigger purpose?
Yeah, no, totally. That makes a lot of sense. I think, having a proper vision and mission in this period is key for that customer trust. Right. So why don't you tell me a little bit about, your approach to the competition, because there's a big field in the financial markets and banking. What's your approach there? So
I wanted to focus on the lens of, in my role, it would be collaboration. I would answer your question as I approach it with collaboration. And I've tried to do that and meet with my counterparts. That might sound maybe a little unorthodox, but that's the only way we can move ahead. So what I mean by that is, say that if we get around the issue of health, right? The things that matter, like your public safety, health, your financial health, and financial well-being, that we collaborate on that. It's a bank, you know, the other five should really come at it as saying, okay, we care about the health or the financial well-being of the communities. Let's get around it and, you know, support the programs that are going to help the community. I'm hoping that makes sense, because that's the way I would see it.
No, yeah, it makes sense to me. That kind of leads me to another point too. You talked a little bit how you transitioned from an advertising role into Wintrust. In this current market, do you feel it's more difficult, or is it easier to enter into the banking market?
I think it's more difficult. I have an answer for why. I think it's easier in some roles, but I think your traditional, what you see and what people normally don't see is like the risk management, the BSA, the bank, cybersecurity. There's some other layers in there and other roles that are very, very good that you can get into banking with and have a successful career. You don't really see those. So I think it's easy on that side, but it's harder on the traditional, because I've seen it happen where everyone's moving from bank to bank, one, to grow your career, because that's what you have to do. But other times when opportunities come available, and this is only, from my seat, I've seen that we bring other folks from other banks. So, there's a lot in there where we're not, growing from within, and you're just getting people moving from this bank to that bank to that bank. And that's why for a younger person, especially, minorities, it's harder to break in, because you're just switching out roles from institution to institution.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Let's go back to you personally within your role. Can you tell us about an accomplishment that you're most proud of during your time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think, and this experience was incredibly valuable. I learned so much when I started to engage, and I can say I pioneered an engagement model and a step-by-step plan to serve the Black, the Latino, the Indian, the Chinese, and the LGBTQ communities locally. So I met with over 85 organizations easily during my time, from, flipping the switch, so to speak, in 2011 to engage with communities. And I'm very proud of that. I've learned a lot, especially how to do business, how not to do business, in those communities. Another thing that I'm very proud of is that I developed the underbanked plan, a plan for us to serve those who are underbanked. And I think, we still haven't solved that. So we're seeing that come something that merits our attention. Another thing I would say are pillars of support. When we went back and I talked about corporate purpose, I was given the freedom to create those pillars of support, right? To say, instead of going big and saying we're supporting everything and solving everything, that you laser focus, that can be a whole other conversation, but that you laser focus on, we care about these two things: strong community, strong economic climate, and the sub-values within, and it gives us a greater purpose and something that we can track and measure, which is more CSR related. But yeah, I would say I'm pretty proud of those things.
Yeah, that's a great list. You and I, we kind of had some time prior to this call to kind of get to know each other and prep a little bit. And I wanted to know if you wanted to share like a personal issue where that helped you to overcome an obstacle and showing some resilience in your career at Wintrust.
Oh, sure. And I think this also ties into, I can still answer the regret question, but it is tied into regrets. So in 2009, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that's still, again, it's not curable. It's incurable. I had to have a transplant. I can't even qualify for a life insurance because of my mortality rate. So I think weaving in the regret is that I regret not telling that story. So what I did instead was pour myself into work, because that made me feel alive. That made me, a sense of normalcy. Life was still okay. So looking back on it, I really look at that time when my career was excelling in 2011, but I had been diagnosed in 2009, that really helped me career-wise, but it didn't really help me, on the personal side. So anyone going through that, I should have shared that, because, we all go through many challenges, and health is one of them, because you realize if you don't have that, you don't have much else. That could have been a nice story to share, So I'm starting to wrap my head around, how do you share that? What do you talk about? Again, there's so many things in that, right? That your life changes. So that was one thing that really taught me resiliency. And I wanted to share also, because I want to provide, some insight, but then some advice that on the flip side, professionally, that also led me to be a little bit less tolerable and a little bit less patient, right? Because I was coming at it from like, life's too short. We got to get this done now, stop, any excuses, any BS, so to speak, like do this now. And so I became less tolerant, and I was just like chugging along. Yeah. So a lot to, peel back on and observe now, but that was one thing that, if nothing else, it's allowed me to be a resilient leader.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a turning point. And so, you talked about a lot of the accomplishments that you've had at Wintrust. For the young professionals who are listening now in the Emerging Leaders Board and team,
Sure.
what are you hoping they kind of bring more to the city of Chicago and then the business community in Chicago?
Oh, sure. So this one I have three specific points. One of them is to be more keen on the corporate purpose. I think if you can pitch that, whatever you're trying to pitch, and no doubt you're young leader, about how revenue is important and how you can contribute to generating revenue for your company, but operate it from a corporate purpose, and you'll go far, because that is front and center today. Another thing I would say is leaders, and I have to attribute this to a Crane's leadership series that I was just a part of, the second one. Leaders, that you don't have to have all the answers. A good leader will, obviously, easier said than done, right? Inspire, don't say go, but you inspire, you bring them along, and you don't have the answers, and it's okay, but you bring folks to arrive at an answer. And I think as a leader, right, you want to say, oh, I have the answer. You want to seem valuable, but just pull back, stay calm, but inspire others so that, management can see that you're really bringing folks together and it's a team approach. The other thing I would say is networking has changed, right? You don't have that luxury anymore of going to an evening event, a morning event, a lunch, and starting to build relationships and do a face-to-face intro. So you want to humanize the virtual interaction. So if you're bold enough, you reach out on LinkedIn or leverage your connections, but start to humanize. So instead of going gung-ho and saying, let's get to know each other. What have you done? What have I done? Start out with, what do you like to cook? What do you like to watch? And really start to network that way, because that's all we have right now. So that's a big one. The other guidance, and again, I'm going to give credit to the Crane's leadership here, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen because I just want to read it really quickly. I learned this in the Resilient Leadership course that I was on. And Todd and Emily do a great job, if you guys know who I'm referring to. But they've taught us to look at the Navy SEALs Fighting for Tomorrow. This came from Eric Baker's summary of Steve Southwick and Dennis Charney's book, Resilience, the Science of Mastering Life Greatest Challenges. So really quickly, from 1 to 10, and I'd be happy to share this with anyone. Number 1 is be optimistic but realistic. Face your fears, have a moral compass, practice spirituality. I think that's huge. Get social support, have resilient role models, maintain physical fitness, keep your brain strong, be cognitively flexible. And number 10 is find meaning in what you do. So those were my 3 strong points. I wanted to get those in there for guidance.
Very good. That's really good advice. So like switching gears a little bit from your professional, background into more of the community impact that you have in your role. In your own words, why is it important for professionals to be giving back to their communities? Oh,
sure. Because community is powerful, and if you take a page from even Chicago, right, that we're such a small town, you have to give back. It's the right thing to do. And if you care about, your surroundings, and again, going back to the moral compass, you have to give back. you're setting up for the future. So anything that you can give back, whether it is something tangible or maybe your personal or time equity, whatever your currency would be, is give back in any way you can, because you care about this place and, you want to leave it better than you found it or you came into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like we talked about in the intro, you're leading this community impact division at Wintrust, right? But your commitment to community doesn't stop there. Tell us a little bit about some of the boards that you're currently serving on too.
Oh, sure. So they're the commerce boards. It's this board, the Chicagoland Chamber, and then the Illinois Chamber too, which I lead the International Business Council. That's more of foreign direct investment and inbound and outbound business here in Illinois, which is really exciting. The other thing, that's it. Those two. But the other thing, knowing my health story and my experience and things I've learned, I'm shopping around for being on a board of a health, either a health system or, dare I say, an insurance company. So that's what I'm looking for most recently.
Yeah. And so for people who might be interested in getting involved with boards, like what would you say are some of the things that you would advise them to do or to set themselves apart for that?
Oh, yeah. And then that's one of our signature programs too on the board. That's the program I oversee, is we have some best practices, right? You want to add value by your expertise, but you also want to ask the question to the organization, kind of, what are you looking for? As a banker, are you looking for me to just be on the finance committee? Because sometimes that's like very linear. But I think boards are starting to get smarter. They're trying to diversify. They're bringing in generational knowledge now. So you want to see where you would fit in. You want to see, both what is your value add and then what could you bring back for your business. Gosh, there's so many things that you would get involved with. And, if you're a consultant or a sole proprietor, maybe there's people on the board that you obviously want to mine for business. That's the reality we're in, right? You also want to be of service. So that's the value add. I think another thing is just see where you could fit in also on the associate board, knowing I want to be sensitive to the audience that I'm addressing here, but the associate boards are very, very good ground to start with. And I think large organizations that I happen to touch are also now bringing in associate boards. So there's an opportunity for you to really sharpen your skills there.
Yeah.
So the board, I can go on and on.
No, you're right about the associate. I've seen a lot of, like the bigger boards, they do have like that more like a junior level board that kind of gives you a little bit of a taste of what, what to look forward to. I don't want to be remiss of, we're kicking off Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th. And we talked a little bit about this in our pre-talk about some of the things that Wintrust is doing to celebrate this month. And I just wanted to see if you could just share some of that with us.
Oh, sure. I should have put that in the accomplishments because that's something I pioneered. Wintrust let me do this quite a few years ago, that we were celebrating. I made a pitch to create a program, if you will, to celebrate all heritage months. And we did happen to start with Hispanic heritage. And what we did was, it wasn't about us. We opened up our properties. This mostly was at the Grand Banking Hall, but we did some in Rosemont too. So what the format was celebrating, right? And celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, we would have some purposeful and dynamic conversations with leaders. And by design, we did it by industry, right? So there could have been an architect on the panel. There could have been someone in this, civically engaged, a nonprofit executive, a business owner of some other, industry. So we try to diversify it, have a panelist, and really learn from them, because we wanted to have our consumer audience and our business audience understand what it took to be where they are and to celebrate Hispanic heritage at the same time. Fast forward, I love the fact that it grew to veterans. Then we did Black History Month, Women's Month. We did Asian American Pacific Islander, Pride, and it's been in the works for years now. Now our D&I office manages that program, but what a proud program, to start to cultivate and to really see it launch. And now we get questions, are you going to do that now?
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. I think having these employee resource groups, business resource groups at companies, just kind of help to embolden those who are underrepresented and maybe those who are on the fringes to give them the empowerment to lead and to seek talent from a more diverse talent pool. So that's great. So I wanted to kind of switch gears yet again to more broader leadership, tendencies that you've seen in yourself or in others, and just leadership principles in general. So before we get there, what would you tell Susana, the kid, back 30, 40 years ago? What would you tell that person? Or something that you change from that person to do in the future?
To tell the kid is, I struggled with that one. It was a little hard. I don't probably just have more fun. but what I had in my notes here, what I would tell a younger self would be, be authentic. Don't compartmentalize. And maybe that's a tidbit for somebody listening right now where, you're so rigid here, at work, and you're known one way, you have another line drawn really for your personal and for your friends and, for your neighbors. I would say you have to show it all, right? And I think I learned that the hard way. And I learned the hard way because I wasn't necessarily building bridges. And I think in corporate America or any, office setting, you need to build bridges because you need allies. You need allies to champion your ideas. And because people didn't really know me, they just knew me kind of one way. I saw that I didn't have that, that structure, that benefit. Hopefully that somebody takes that back and understands that.
Yeah, no, and when we talked last week, I want to bring this up too, because you mentioned it was kind of like a revelation how, your service to the community, your desire to give back, that kind of stems from your childhood, right? You talked about how your parents kind of helped with that upbringing as well, of wanting to give back. I want to see if you could share some of that too.
Oh yeah, giving back in many ways was always there, but I didn't necessarily see it until I sat down, I thought about it. So anything from being a great host. My parents love to have people over. I see that translated now, but ironically, I used to complain about it. I used to say, like, why are people here? And especially on Sundays. And now I'm doing it. So it's like, that's wonderful. So giving back, and obviously, when they would go to church, that was a big deal, giving back in any way, whether it was visiting somebody in the hospital or a monetary aid or something like that. All of that, you may not see it, all of us. I'm sure that we've forgotten about stuff that our parents did. But there's probably no doubt that was the foundation, right, of now what I do and I catch myself doing. So that's great, because even if we don't have time, just yesterday I was texting somebody at 8 o'clock at night, just saying, talking about minority certifications and the benefits of it and how I could help them connect to an association. It takes on many forms. So I'm sure the people even watching, they're out there randomly, like, giving back in any way.
Yeah, that's great. And, your history and everything you're doing up until this point is just outstanding. I just want to commend you for that. You've laid the foundation for, your career. What do you hope to accomplish next?
So I hope that I'm more of a chief of community strategy. I think I bring an interesting lens to the community. No one can take that away of having a keen understanding, especially locally, and again, being born and raised in Chicago, the nuances of our Asian communities, right? The LGBTQ community, Black, and the Hispanic community. I hope that I'm, again, tapped as we expand branches, or maybe, who knows, in another role too. As we grow at Wintrust, or I could go anywhere else, that I bring in that, like, acumen of what it is to serve locally, and knowing the challenges of, social equity, racial equity. And, I hope I'm viewed that way. So there's a lot of exciting path in terms of strategic, right? Being a strategist.
Right. Yeah. I think that's definitely in your horizon based on everything we've been talking about. So, what do you want to be remembered for, Susana?
For helping, I think I get those calls now, but the random like, hey, do you know, if I don't know the answer, right? Like just connecting them to the person that's going to be able to help them, being a resource.
Good, yeah. So we talked a lot about how involved you are giving back in the community, some of the chamber work that you're doing. Thinking that you don't have much free time other than maybe watching football.
Watching
When you do have time, though, what else do you like to do on your free time?
I like to cook a lot. We do that together, my husband and I. We have, in the spirit of sharing, we have a foodie Instagram. It's called at Gastronomia Garcia. So we love to do that. We used to love to travel and eat around. Going back to the Bourdain comment, we would follow every single Bourdain kind of episode. And then when we would travel there, we would go there. So that's what we would do. On the flip side, I like to watch mindless entertainment on Netflix and veg out.
I think you mentioned one of them. What was the most recent thing you watched on Netflix?
Shameless. I just started. Apparently, I'm late to the party because it aired in 11, I think. And now I'm on season 10. And there was a lot of rough parts in there too. Talk about, what they talk about another study in like Chicago, right? And systematic problems. Systematic problems. But they've won awards and William H. Macy is great on it. So that's what I've been watching.
Awesome. Well, I want to be mindful of our time. So
Sure.
Thank you for your candidness and giving us a glimpse into your personal and professional growth. But let's turn it over to the audience for some of your questions. There's a few of them that have come into the chat box, and I'll just go ahead and start reading them off. So this first one here, on the professional front, what might be the limiting factor for the Latino community if they're trying to get into the corporate front? We're young, still evolving group with few people in the higher ranks. What should we focus on, in your opinion?
I think real purposeful collaboration, because a lot of us, we either get there and forget, and I think they know what I mean by that. There's no effort. I strictly remember even saying that the Asian community was going to get it right. I'll go as that far because I've said it. There is no strong cohesiveness of let me get you there. There was a White House initiative, right? The Asian White House initiative on AAPI. But there's nothing like that where there's a select few that are moving and shaking, but there's no collaboration to really get the whole and move the whole mass, especially those, the question says, on the corporate front, right? You need to push more because we're losing that battle. I think I don't see people like me, right? There's beyond this, there's no one else higher up who's Latino, and that we have those folks, we have some Hispanics on our boards, but we have to be pushing more in a unified way.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think, having that sponsor, advisor role is key. And that kind of leads to this next question too. So who are some of your mentors? And for young professionals looking to find mentorship outside of the workplace, how do you suggest they start that?
If you haven't found it through an alumni, or right now, I think I'm even learning a lot from my mentee, Robin, who's an MBA student at Loyola Baumhart School, where they do, they focus on corporate social responsibility. If you don't have that through your school framework, be bold enough and leverage your network. And that's where I said, I think how do you want to be known? Look to see who I know even, or maybe, Angel, I don't put you in a tough spot, right? But nowadays, I think it's understood, I'm not going to meet this person. I'm not going to meet this circle in person. I really want to tap into that circle, or I really want to get to know that person. Just go down there on that list and say, can you help me navigate, and can you help me get in front of that? And then I think having an honest conversation and saying, are you open to some coaching? Are you open to advising? Because a lot of us, again, going back to the demands, you could be a mentor, and I even do that with Robin, but we go pretty aggressively every other week for an hour. But maybe coaching, people might be more, malleable to coaching, or maybe advising, right? One or two things.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think, to that point, the key is just to be bold and to approach people. And I think if you approach people with humility, kind of like, in a way of like, hey, I'm seeking your advice. Most people are open to that because they're flattered by that approach and that opportunity. So I think boldness is key to make that initial connection.
Yeah.
So another question from the Q&A, how do you think the city has changed in the wake of widespread protests calling for racial equality? What are you seeing through your community work?
So what has changed is that people are more apt to listen. I think we even saw it where I was afraid of observing that something at the top wasn't even going to change. I think that's even a bold and candid statement, right? I think now we're weeks into it, they're like, okay, this is not going to go back to normal. There's years of wrongdoing here. They're more apt to listen. So now the thing is, what do they do with that listening, right? So that's what I'm seeing through my community work, that there's a CEO Action Coalition getting online that's going to explore this. There's conversations happening, with a lot of CEOs, a lot of stakeholders. So that's what I'm starting to see. We have yet to see what's going to, what will be produced or the outcome of those conversations. But I think what's changed are some ears opening.
Yeah, definitely more to come there. So, going back to the community impact work that you're doing, what more can we be doing, maybe as individuals or as private companies or even in the government sector? What more can we be doing to address the problem of underinvestment in minority communities?
Yeah, I think if it's a person or even an institution, right, you have to understand where you can make an impact. So what I mean by that is, if you're a small business or if you're even one person, if you care about health or if you care about immigration, laser focus on that and look at the systems around and the programs, the reputable programs that take place frequently, and start to give back of your time or donate money to that. And if you, in the absence of a real flushed out plan, right? In the absence of a flushed out impact plan, find out what you're good at, what you align yourself with, what your personal, professional values align yourselves with, and start to look at the programs and fund those to make a change. Because there's a lot of programs out there, and that's something, one of the questions earlier is, what did you learn? There's a lot of hollow programs. Let's be that candid too. So you want to look at how to do a deliberate focus to partner with those programs. I think that's something we could be doing.
Yeah, no, your candidness, I love it. You're right about the hollow programs, right? Just kind of like checking the box, and we're saying that we're doing something, but there's got to be more substance to it. I agree. Yeah.
And if there's a series of if there's a circle of business owners, have them just get together and do that. It takes some organization, and we don't have a lot of time, but just get the 10 of you or the 5 of you.
Right. And this is a question kind of geared towards like your community social responsibility work. The space is kind of new in general. It's being defined in how companies and individuals give back. Can you talk a little bit about the diversity of professionals in this space? How do we continue to grow, diversify, and learn? And then also the second part is, what do you see is the future of social impact, given the time that we're in this pandemic state with COVID and all?
Oh, sure. So if I can talk about the diversity in this space, there is none. I've been to corporate partner breakfasts. There's one that I vividly remember, and I think I was the second brown person in there, short of another, a Black executive that was there. So there is none. So we have to change it, right? Those goes back to the steps. Even again, in the candor, like while I grew this area, I grew the department, I'm still not the executive on it. And thank God that executive and I have such a great relationship and we're honest, it's open. But I wasn't allowed to lead the department. There was no appetite to do that. So if you even take my example, there's a lot of questions around that, right? Of, she grew it, why isn't she allowed to lead the department? So I haven't figured it out. I'm willing to talk to the person too that was asking that question, because we all need to do a better job of diversifying the professionals in that social impact space. And where do I see it heading? Was that the question?
Yeah, so I guess in this, virtual setting that we're in right now, pandemic, lockdown, how do you see that impacting the work?
It goes back to you're ensuring your future profitability while showing your values. I think it's going to go hand in hand if it's not already. So this is not a innovation program no, that's not the word. Initiative. This is not an initiative that comes and goes, right? The future is very tied to, these are our values as a entity, and this is how we care, and this is how we also generate money. So that profit and purpose, you're going to probably see more narrative, more content, more proof, more reporting, more metrics around it.
Yeah, no, I think, the data field, the getting the hardcore numbers behind it is going to help propel it. So I totally agree with that. Let's see here. Another question from the chat. So going back to kind of like the community investment and the community impact, I'm sure there's some community groups that might be skeptical of having like a big bank come in and try to, get involved and maybe, I don't know if gentrification is the word, but have you seen that? Have you seen kind of skepticism from some community members? And what groups have you seen to be kind of more difficult to kind of break into? Yeah,
I think to some degree, all of them, right? And they've all been very nice and honest at times and said, you're just the other bank that's going to come here to the trade shows and the conferences and the festivals, and you'll be gone in 2 years. Yeah. Like, I've heard it. So I think I wouldn't single any community out. I think, they're all rich in their history, and, there's a lot of wrongdoing. So they should be concerned. And I haven't seen one over the other. I think at certain times they've all expressed like, okay, here you are. Who are you? What are you doing? And how long will you be here?
Got it. Okay. So kind of getting into this kind of like professional growth questions that are happening here. So what paths for advancement does Wintrust offer, specifically for people of color and underserved segments? And do they offer tuition assistance? That's something I don't know.
Yeah, they do offer tuition assistance, and I'd be happy to, don't quiz me because I don't know the answer. But I'd be happy to find out or patch that person through to find out exactly what is in that tuition assistance offering. And the path is, learning development plan that we offer. And it's a very comprehensive plan that is done in alignment with your manager. But, to see where are you headed, what do you need, what are the skills that you need to get there, the certification. And then one thing I like that I've seen now more recently, because it wasn't there before, was if something's not working or clicking both ways here, maybe the mortgage company would be an option. Throw that out there, right? Maybe, our wealth company, or maybe this bank over here. So there's a lot of that flexibility now.
Yeah. So this kind of goes back to in the virtual world that we're living in right now, right? You kind of talked about relationships mattering, right? They matter. What advice would you give to young professionals to help them maintain relationships in this virtual world that we're living in? And then also to kind of avoid, sounding salesy
right.
online. What kind of advice would you give to people who want to reach out to random people, or not so much random, but maybe not well-known people like on LinkedIn, whatnot?
Yeah, I would say because I get them through LinkedIn, and some of the better ones, they never start out with the pitch or what used to be the deck, right? That you would go through and say, does this interest you? It's, I find that I can add value here. If you could at least guide me with your top like objectives, maybe we can find a fit. If nothing else, I'm open to a mutually beneficial like coaching or something advising relationship. If you hit them with that honesty, again, there's a lot of nuances, right? We're all different. That's what resonates with me. But I think some of the most like the beneficial, just get to it. Like kind of, this is what I bring.
Yeah. Okay. Here's kind of, it should be a fun question. So if money was no limitation, what type of business or nonprofit organization would you want to start and why?
God, I think I had, well, this is like kind of a real bold one, but again, organ availability is huge to me, right? That is huge. And we have those organizations. If money was no option, I've always mentioned this in very careful conversations, that why can't we have more of a access by organ donation through folks that have committed white collar crime? So I know people are probably like, so if you've committed a white collar crime, maybe you can reduce your sentence by X or something by giving back and, being an organ donor to some degree, right? So that's bold, that's very candid, that's a personal pain of mine, right? Because Mayo Clinic is very, very, they educate you a lot. They say, your organ is good for 10 years, then you're going to need one. Then what if you don't get one? So I think if money was no option, having a system that kind of has that like life stage, organ donation, emotional support, professional support, that's my answer. But
okay, yeah, that's it seems very personal. And you said bold, but it's a good one. I
probably scared a few people.
We still have the same group of people here, so we're good. And this will be the last one before we close this. But just in general, what advice would you give to people who are young, so the youth, right, in our underserved communities? What advice would you give them as they go on to their career path, as they try to figure out what they want to do, how they want to give back? What piece of advice would you leave them with?
Use the programs around you. Some of them may not even discover them, but we have tremendous nonprofits that are doing good, really good, honest programming. Take advantage of those. You have to take advantage, especially some that are going to get you to be a good writer, a good communicator. That's so essential. Another one, if you can't get to it as you move through school, my personal opinion, start to get involved with the college or student newspaper in high school too. I've found that if people that have that journalistic training, you're good with relationships. And we're talking about why relationships matter, right? Being able to ask the right question and at the right time. You'll find that skill set will transfer everywhere, right? To spotting, questionable influences in corporate conversations. That sounded a little coded, but you can spot stuff, right? So yeah. I think all of that's sort of a long answer, but programs, reading, writing, communication training, and student newspaper will give you an edge.
Yeah, I thumbs up to the journalism shout out. I actually wrote for my college newspaper as well at Loyola.
Oh, nice.
So definitely agree with that. That's a keen skill to have.
Wait, where was the college?
Oh, Loyola, up in the north. So.
Yeah.
Campus, yeah. Well, that concludes this session, and I just want to say thank you so much, Susana, for being open with us and sharing your time. I had a blast, and I hope your audience did too. I don't know if you have any other closing statements before we kick it off.
They can find me on LinkedIn. Anything that they need, I make myself available. So hopefully I didn't scare too many people, but I gave them something to think about.
Totally. Thank you so much, Susana.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll pass it back to Jack.
Wow, that was great. I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Angel, for moderating. Thank you for your leadership at Here Technologies. We greatly appreciate everything Here Technologies does for the Chamber. And a special thank you to you, Susana. First of all, you survived. We've had many of our board members go through this, and you made it. And I learned a lot of new things, so I greatly appreciate that. But I really want to thank you for sharing both the personal and professional side. I think everyone needs to hear that. And we all deal with things in our personal and professional lives, and they both come together, and that's how we're successful. And part of that is resiliency. And I love the definition of resiliency. Hopefully you can get that out to all of us, because I think that's really important. You had a lot of fans in the chat box. We had a lot of compliments on the presentation today and the work that Wintrust has done. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for your resiliency and being a true leader in the business community, and giving back in the civic community. So really appreciate you being here today, Susana, and all your remarks. And I also want to thank again Lisa and Jeff for your leadership of the Emerging Leaders. This is our Fireside Chat, and they've been a great success, and we look forward to future Fireside Chats. So thank you all for being here this morning. Have a great weekend. And thank you again, Susana. I really appreciate you being here and your leadership at the Chamber.
Thank you all. It was an honor.